The words, U.S. Marshal, silenced the entire precinct. Now, the same cops who laughed are the ones standing in handcuffs. Anthony Briggs, mid-30s, calm, steady-eyed, had just finished a long surveillance shift. The badge clipped discreetly at his waist glinted under his jacket as he hummed softly to the radio. To most people, he looked like any man heading home after a long day. But Anthony wasn't most people. He was a U.S. Marshal, and a damn good one. As he turned onto Willow Creek Road, the distant wail of a siren cut through the music. Anthony's brow furrowed. He glanced at the rearview mirror. Flashing red and blue lights danced behind him. "What now?" he muttered, pulling to the side. The cruiser stopped aggressively, tires grinding against the asphalt. Two uniformed officers stepped out, Officer Daniels and Officer Miller, both mid-40s, with the unmistakable swagger of men who believed the badge gave them superiority. They exchanged a smirk before approaching. Anthony rolled his window down halfway, resting his hand calmly on the steering wheel. Daniels leaned in, his hand already near his holster. "License and registration." Anthony reached slowly toward his glove compartment. "Sure thing, officer. May I ask what's the reason for the stop?" "Don't play smart," Miller barked from the passenger side. "You were driving suspiciously slow through a residential zone. People like you don't usually drive cars like this around here." Anthony's jaw tightened. "People like me?" Daniels smirked, stepping closer. "Yeah, you know what I mean." His tone dripped with condescension. "Step out of the vehicle," Anthony sighed, keeping his movements deliberate and calm. "I'm complying," he said, unbuckling his seatbelt and stepping out. The late afternoon sun hit his face as he stood upright, his posture firm but non-threatening. The cops flanked him immediately, one on each side. Daniels began circling the SUV, glancing inside like he expected to find contraband. Miller folded his arms, glaring at Anthony. "You got any weapons on you?" Anthony met his gaze steadily. "Yes," he said plainly. "I'm carrying a service weapon. I'm a federal officer." Daniels froze mid-step, then scoffed. "Federal officer? Yeah, right. You expect us to believe that?" Anthony slowly unzipped his jacket, revealing the polished badge clipped to his belt. "Check my badge. I'm U.S. Marshal Briggs." Miller squinted, refusing to move closer. "Fake badges are easy to buy online these days. You think we're stupid?" Anthony's patience was thinning, but his training kicked in. "Keep calm. Control the situation. Call it in," he said evenly. "Run my name." "Anthony Briggs, U.S. Marshal Service, District of Chicago." Instead of checking, Daniels smirked. "Hands behind your head." Anthony blinked in disbelief. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Daniels barked, stepping closer, hand gripping his baton. "Hands up. Now." Anthony exhaled through his nose, his pulse steady but rising. "Officer, this is a mistake. You're detaining a federal marshal." Before he could finish, Miller cut in sharply. "Stop lying, motherfucker!" Anthony's eyes flashed with quiet anger. The tension on the street thickened like smoke. A few neighbors peeked through their blinds, whispering. One even pulled out a phone, recording. Daniels reached for Anthony's arm. "Turn around." Anthony didn't move. He spoke slowly, his voice low but commanding, the kind of tone that came from years of federal authority. "I'm warning you. You're making a serious mistake." Daniels hesitated. Something in Anthony's tone made him falter for a split second, that unmistakable authority of someone who wasn't bluffing. But pride was stronger than reason. He sneered. "You think you can talk your way out of this, huh?" Anthony looked him dead in the eye. "No, I can prove it." He reached for his back pocket, pulling out his official identification wallet. Daniels instinctively drew his baton halfway. "Don't move." Anthony froze, exasperated. "I said it's my ID. Check it before you embarrass yourselves further." But they didn't. Miller grabbed Anthony's wrist, twisting it. Anthony grimaced but didn't resist. He could have, easily. Years of tactical training meant he could drop both men before they blinked, but he stayed still. The badge on his belt gleamed in the sun, undeniable proof of his identity. As they shoved him against the SUV, Anthony spoke through clenched teeth. "You're detaining a Marshal of the United States. The moment this call goes upstairs, your careers are over." Daniels chuckled darkly. "We'll see about that." Behind them, a faint voice shouted from a few yards away, a neighbor holding up her phone. "I got everything on camera. He showed you his badge." Daniels turned, furious. "Stay out of this, ma'am." Anthony looked up toward the sky, trying to contain the frustration boiling inside him. He'd faced dangerous criminals, high-stakes fugitives, and life-threatening raids, but nothing felt as degrading as this moment. Then his phone, lying on the front seat, began to ring. The caller ID flashed clearly through the window. Deputy Director Collins, U.S. Marshal Service. And Daniels saw it. For the first time, doubt crept into his face. Anthony turned his head slowly, eyes locked on him. "Go ahead," he said, voice calm but edged with warning. "Answer it." Daniels hesitated, the first flicker of uncertainty in his arrogant stance. And in that brief silence, the balance of power began to shift. The sound of the ringing phone sliced through the tense air like a blade. Daniels glanced at it again. That glowing text, Deputy Director Collins, U.S. Marshal Service. His confidence wavered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. Miller looked at him, uncertain. "What's that?" Anthony, still pinned against his SUV, spoke evenly. "That's my superior." "You still think I'm lying?" Daniels tried to recover, his tone faltering. "Could be anyone, could be a setup." But his hand dropped slightly from Anthony's shoulder, and that tiny hesitation was enough. Anthony turned around slowly, facing them fully now, his composure unbroken. "You've got two choices," Anthony said, voice low and precise. "You can keep digging this hole deeper, or you can check the system, call it in, confirm my badge number, do your job." For a moment, the only sound was the distant buzz of cicadas and the low rumble of cars passing on the opposite street. The neighbor still recorded, whispering to someone off camera. Miller shifted uncomfortably. "Daniels, maybe we should—" "Shut up!" Daniels snapped, his ego clawing for control. "You don't tell me how to do my job." Anthony studied the man's face, the tight jaw, the twitching brow, the kind of man who'd rather double down on a mistake than admit he made one. He'd seen men like that before, on both sides of the law. Then Anthony's phone stopped ringing. Silence returned for a brief moment, and then it rang again. Daniels sighed, clearly rattled. "All right," he muttered, yanking the SUV door open and snatching the phone. "Let's see who's so desperate to talk to you." He pressed the speaker button. "This is Officer Daniels, Brookdale PD. Who is this?" A commanding voice thundered through the line. "This is Deputy Director Collins of the United States Marshal Service." "Who the hell are you, officer? And why are you answering Marshal Briggs's phone?" Daniels froze. His lips parted, but no words came out. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Collins snapped. "You have one of my senior marshals detained on the side of the road. Are you out of your mind?" Miller's eyes widened. "Senior marshal?" he mouthed to Daniels. Anthony folded his arms, silently watching the scene unravel. Collins's voice continued, cold and clipped. "You're going to release him immediately, return his property, and stand by for an internal affairs report. And officer—" "Yes, sir," Daniels stammered. "You'd better pray there's no body cam footage of this, because if I see my marshal being treated like a suspect again, I'll personally make sure you're writing parking tickets in the middle of nowhere." The line went dead. For a long moment, none of them moved. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Daniels finally looked up, his face pale. He cleared his throat. "Marshal Briggs, we, didn't—" Anthony cut him off sharply. "Save it." He stepped forward, his full height casting a shadow over both officers. His tone was controlled, but his eyes burned with restrained fury. "You saw my badge. You ignored it. You heard me identify myself, and you still treated me like a suspect because of the color of my skin." Daniels's lips trembled slightly. "We were just following protocol." "No," Anthony said firmly. "You were following prejudice. There's a difference." Miller lowered his head, guilt creeping into his expression. "Sir, we didn't mean to—" Anthony glared at him. "Didn't mean to what? Humiliate me in front of my neighbors? Slam me against my own vehicle? You don't get to hide behind apologies when your instinct was to assume guilt instead of checking facts." A hush fell. Even the neighbor holding the phone stopped whispering. Daniels finally spoke, his voice trembling slightly. "Marshal Briggs, if we can start over." Anthony shook his head. "There's no starting over, but you're damn lucky I've got more restraint than you." He reached into his pocket, retrieved his ID wallet, and held it up again, the golden U.S. Marshal emblem gleaming in the sunlight. "This isn't a fake. This isn't a prop. This is authority. the kind you mocked, disrespected, and nearly assaulted. Daniels swallowed hard, the weight of the moment settling in. What happens now? Anthony stepped closer, his tone measured. Now, I drive away. You go back to your cruiser, and when your captain calls, you tell him exactly what happened. Every word, every insult, every threat. He turned toward his SUV, pausing at the open door. And if I see another civilian getting treated like I was today, I won't just file a report. I'll show up at your precinct myself. Daniels and Miller stood frozen, silent, unsure whether to salute or apologize. Anthony climbed into his SUV, started the engine, and pulled away. The neighbor's voice broke the silence from across the street. I got the whole thing on video. World's gonna see what you did. Daniels rubbed his temples, muttering, Jesus Christ. As the black SUV disappeared down the road, Miller turned to his partner. You think he's really gonna report us? Daniels didn't answer. He just stared at the badge imprint still vivid in his mind, the one that said U.S. Marshal Service, the one he had refused to believe. He exhaled shakily. We're screwed, he whispered. Miles away, Anthony drove in silence, his reflection caught in the rearview mirror. The anger simmered under his calm exterior, but behind it was something deeper, disappointment. He'd worn the badge for years, sworn an oath to uphold justice, to be the bridge between law and fairness. Yet today he'd been reminded that even the badge couldn't always protect you from bias. As the city skyline appeared on the horizon, his phone buzzed again. A text from Collins. We'll handle this, Tony. Come in tomorrow morning. Anthony typed back simply, copy that, but I'm not letting this slide. The road stretched ahead, the sun dipping below the skyline. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next morning, the Brookdale Police Department was buzzing. Phones rang non-stop, whispers spread across cubicles, and the chief's office door slammed more than once. Every officer in the building had seen the viral video by now, the one showing 2 city cops roughing up a black man who turned out to be a U.S. Marshal. The clip had over 3 million views overnight. Daniels sat stiffly at his desk, hands clasped, face pale. Miller stared blankly at his computer, the comments section from the video open before him. This is why people don't trust cops. That man handled it like a professional. They didn't deserve the badge. Justice better be served. The comments cut deeper than either man wanted to admit. A knock echoed through the hall. Chief Laird, a tall, grey-haired man with eyes like steel, stepped into the room holding a file. His jaw was tight. My office. Now. Inside, Daniels and Miller sat side by side, heads low. The chief tossed the file on the desk. You 2 idiots realize what you've done? You didn't just harass a federal marshal. You embarrassed this entire department. Chief, we didn't know, Miller began. Didn't know, Laird snapped. He showed you his badge. The whole world saw it. Daniels's voice wavered. Sir, I thought it was fake. There've been cases of... Save it. Internal Affairs will handle your statements. Until then, you're both suspended. Badges, guns, everything. Effective immediately. Daniels opened his mouth to argue but stopped. There was nothing left to say. He reached for his badge, staring at the polished metal that had once made him feel untouchable. Now it just felt heavy, like guilt itself. He placed it on the desk. Meanwhile, across town, Anthony Briggs stepped into the towering glass building of the U.S. Marshal Service District Office. The moment he walked through the lobby, heads turned. Some officers gave him nods of respect, others looks of silent support. In the conference room upstairs, Deputy Director Collins waited, his suit crisp, demeanor unreadable. Anthony, he said, motioning for him to sit. You all right? Anthony nodded slightly. Physically, yes, Collins exhaled. I saw the footage. You handled yourself better than most would. Hell, better than I would. Anthony leaned forward. They didn't just disrespect me. They disrespected the badge. Every good cop out there trying to serve right. Collins nodded. I agree. But now it's political. The media's running with it. The mayor's office called, and the DOJ is watching. Anthony folded his arms. So what happens to them? Internal Affairs has already opened a case, Collins replied. Brookdale PD suspended both officers pending investigation. You'll need to give a statement. Anthony hesitated. I'll do it. But I don't want this to just be about 2 bad cops. I want it to mean something. Collins's brow raised. Meaning? Anthony's eyes hardened. Policy, training, accountability. I've been in law enforcement for years, and I've seen it. How quick some are to pull rank, how fear and bias mix until reason disappears. I want the system to see that too. Collins studied him, then smiled faintly. That's the kind of fire that got you promoted, Briggs, but remember, stay smart. Let the system work. Anthony nodded, but inside he wasn't so sure. Later that afternoon, as he left the building, a crowd of reporters waited outside, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. Marshal Briggs, can you tell us what really happened during that stop? Do you think race played a role? Will you press charges against the officers? Anthony paused on the steps. The sun glaring off the lenses pointed at him. For a moment he considered walking away, but then he looked into one of the cameras and decided to speak. I've served this country for over a decade, he said clearly. I've worn this badge with pride, believing it stood for justice. But yesterday, I was reminded that justice still has blind spots. This isn't just about me, it's about every innocent person who's been stopped, searched or doubted because of the color of their skin. We can do better. We must do better. The crowd erupted in flashes and questions, but Anthony simply walked away. His words had landed exactly where he wanted them to, in the public's conscience. By evening, his statement was on every major network. Hashtags trended across social media. Civil rights advocates reached out to him, calling his composure inspiring and his response the model of discipline. But not everyone was pleased. In a dimly lit bar on the edge of town, Daniel sat hunched over a glass of whiskey, the TV above the counter replaying Anthony's speech. His face hardened with resentment. He's painting us like villains, he muttered. Miller sighed beside him. Maybe we are, Dan. Daniel slammed his glass down. You think I'm going to let my career burn over one mistake? No, he's not done with us, and I'm not done with him. Miller looked uneasy. Dan, don't do something stupid. But Daniel's silence said enough. His pride was wounded, his uniform stripped, and that kind of humiliation could drive a man to dangerous places. Back home, Anthony sat in his quiet apartment, reviewing reports on his laptop. His phone buzzed, an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A low, bitter voice spoke on the other end. You think you're some kind of hero, Marshal. You ruined my life. Anthony froze, instantly recognizing the voice. Daniel's. Then the line went dead. Anthony set the phone down slowly, his expression darkening. The calm from before was gone. Something told him this wasn't over. The night air was thick with tension, the kind that seeps into your bones and won't let go. Anthony sat alone in his apartment, the lights dimmed, his badge resting on the table beside his holstered weapon. The phone call from Daniels still echoed in his mind, those venomous words laced with humiliation and anger. He'd been threatened before, but this felt personal. Daniels wasn't just angry, he was unstable. Anthony's instincts screamed that something was coming. He had seen this pattern before. When pride meets disgrace, reason evaporates. He picked up his phone and called Deputy Director Collins. Tony? Collins answered, voice groggy. We've got a problem, Anthony said quietly. Daniels called me. Direct threat. He's not letting this go. Did you record it? No, Anthony replied. But I know his tone. He's angry, maybe drunk, maybe worse. Collins sighed. All right. I'll alert Brookdale PD and local patrol. Lay low for the night. I'll send someone to watch your building. Anthony nodded, even though he knew he wouldn't sleep anyway. Understood. He hung up, turned off the light, and moved toward the window. From his vantage point, the city glowed beneath the clouds, peaceful, indifferent, unaware of the storm brewing between one disgraced cop and a man who had sworn to uphold the law. Across town, Daniel sat behind the wheel of his unmarked sedan. He wasn't supposed to have it. It belonged to the department. His service weapon lay on the passenger seat, next to an empty whiskey bottle. His face was hollow, eyes bloodshot. Miller's words from earlier played in his mind, don't do something stupid. But in Daniels's mind, the stupid thing had already happened. He'd been humiliated, dragged through the media, suspended, mocked, and all because of that man. Let's see how untouchable you are now, he muttered, starting the engine. It was nearing midnight when Anthony heard the faint rumble of a car pulling up outside his apartment building. His instincts sharpened instantly. He slipped on his jacket, holstered his firearm, and checked the hallway camera feed. There, a man pacing outside his building's entrance, head down, hands tucked into his jacket. The grainy footage flickered, but Anthony didn't need a clear picture to know who it was. Daniels. Anthony's pulse steadied. He didn't panic. Years of fieldwork had conditioned him for moments exactly like this, but his jaw tightened. Daniels wasn't thinking rationally. That made him dangerous. Anthony opened the door quietly and stepped into the hallway. His footsteps were silent as he descended the stairs, every sense alert. The lobby was dark, lit only by the flickering neon from the diner across the street. Daniels was waiting. When the door opened, he turned sharply, revealing the glint of a gun. Anthony stopped 3 paces away. "Daniels, put it down." "Don't," Daniels snarled, raising the weapon. "You took everything from me, my career, my reputation. You think that badge makes you better than me?" Anthony's voice was steady, calm, the same tone he used in standoffs. "You did that to yourself. You had a choice to do your job right, and you didn't." Daniels laughed bitterly. "You don't get it, do you? They'll make me the example. They'll destroy me for what happened. And you," he pointed the gun, "you get to be the hero." Anthony took a slow step forward. "There's still a way to fix this, Daniels. But this isn't it. You pull that trigger and your life's over." Daniels's hand trembled. Sweat glistened on his forehead. His breathing was ragged. "It already is over." Anthony's thumb hovered near his holster. "Don't make me do this." For a long moment they stood frozen, predator and prey, though neither could say who was which. Then tires screeched outside. Blue and red lights flashed through the windows. Collins's voice boomed from outside the building. "Daniels, drop your weapon!" Daniels's head snapped toward the light. The hesitation was all Anthony needed. In a single motion, Anthony drew, aimed and fired, a warning shot that struck the marble floor inches from Daniels's foot. The shock jolted Daniels's mind back to reality. His knees buckled, and he dropped the weapon, collapsing to the ground, sobbing. Officers stormed in seconds later, pinning him down and cuffing him. Collins entered right behind them, his expression grave. "You all right, Tony?" Anthony nodded, lowering his weapon. "Yeah, but this could have gone bad." Daniels looked up, eyes filled with regret, fear and shame. I just wanted it to stop." Anthony crouched beside him. "You wanted it to stop? Then you should have stopped it when you had the chance, before you treated an innocent man like a criminal." Daniels said nothing. The fight had drained out of him completely. As the officers escorted him out, Collins placed a hand on Anthony's shoulder. "You handled that perfectly." Again. Anthony gave a tired smile. "Yeah, but it shouldn't have come to this." Later, standing outside under the blinking streetlights, Anthony watched the squad cars drive away. The night felt quiet again, almost peaceful, but he knew the storm wasn't truly over. The next morning, the news broke again. Disgraced officer arrested after attempted confrontation with U.S. Marshal. Reporters called it a full-circle moment. Social media hailed Anthony as a symbol of restraint, discipline, and strength. At the U.S. Marshal office, Collins handed him a commendation letter. For exemplary conduct under threat, Anthony read it silently, then set it down. "I don't need a medal," he said softly. "I just want the system to learn from this." Collins nodded. "And because of you, maybe it will." That evening, Anthony drove back down Willow Creek Road, the same street where it all began. The sunset washed the neighborhood in gold, just like that first day. But this time, the air felt lighter, cleaner, like justice had finally taken a breath. He parked the SUV, looked at his badge in the rearview mirror, and whispered to himself, "Still serving, still standing." Then he smiled faintly, started the engine, and drove toward the horizon, leaving behind not anger, but a legacy of restraint and justice in the face of hate.